So it is my birthday on the 12th of next month. And so I'm thinking of buying a box and a bundle.
A box, eh?
Yeah, an old school box of Magic cards.
Crikey. I would be... I might get bundle. Things I've already bought the Fairy Commander, which is really annoying because I've essentially built the deck already once. Because when I looked at the deck list, I was like, oh, cool, it's got some really cool inclusions that I've already bought.
Well then, that's your fault for...
Well, yeah, but well, there were some cards in that I didn't expect to be in there. Like, there's Kindred Dominance. I didn't expect Glenelender Archmage to be in there, but annoyingly, it's the exact same artwork that I've already got, and I kind of wanted the other artwork anyway.
What's the one?
One.
Oh, the old school one.
Yeah,
the
old school. Yeah, the Morning Tide
Interesting, because I do like that artwork, but actually I thought what they did in
the
the revamp, the Wasp one's
really
much cooler.
Really cool.
Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast, where we talk about all things Magic flavour design and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mann.
Oh, hello. This is Nathan Cancel.
When I listened back to episode 2 of Magic the Flavouring,
yes,
in preparation for this podcast, 9th of January 2020, we actually recorded it.
God, that was over 3 years ago.
We recorded it in 2019 because we released it at once.
That's gross.
The intro was different. As was the outro.
Really?
Of course it was, but
what
it was.
To say?
So I used to go. Welcome to Magic Flavouring, the Magic podcast. We talk about lore, flavour, and design. Like I just kind of fumble through an idea of it, and then at the end, I say thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring. You go, yep, until next time, and then the intro. I commissioned from the guy that did our intro a track, like a 2-minute track, which I could chop up and use bits for, which I've done in our YouTube stuff. And then I commissioned him to do an intro version, because I was like, well, the intro has to be kind of its own self-contained thing. And then I didn't commission an outro. So what I did was instead, I don't know if you remember, is I just used to loop the middle section.
I just got to play it in reverse.
I looped the middle section for about 30 seconds and just faded it out. And it's the
I do remember, because I remember it fading out, and I remember listening to be like, why is this fading out why is this track...
It was slow!
Why is the podcast another 20 seconds long?
Yeah, but do you know how I fixed that? I just used the end of the 2-minute track that he already commissioned and made a proper ending for. So it still fades out a little bit, but it fades out on like a wham, 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 as opposed to just fading out ad nauseum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, if you weren't sure about what we're doing today, folks, it's been 3 years since original Throne of Eldraine, so now we're in
3 years.
Now we're in the wilds of Eldraine. Do you know what happened with me? I got fucking gaslit so much on this, right? Because when the card Throne of Eldraine came out, I looked, I was like, why does that name sound so familiar? And everyone was like, oh, they did the thing where they did the name of the set. I'm like, but the original Eldraine set wasn't called Throne of Eldraine. Or was it?
It well was, yeah.
Or was it? And I'm still not convinced. I'm like, was it not just called Eldraine?
It was called Throne of Eldraine, and the release for it, if you remember, is that at the San Diego Comic-Con of that year. I mean, obviously I mentioned it in the episode that I just listened to, our original one, but I do remember this. They released the invitation to a ball at the Throne of Eldraine. And everyone thought it was
But they also did the invitation to the fucking vampire wedding recently, so that kind of shits on that a little bit.
It's a good mechanic.
No, it's cool, but I also remember thinking, but no one was on the throne. It wasn't about the throne. It was about the fact that the throne was empty.
Yeah, it really was, wasn't it?
And the thing is, as much as this story... by the way, we're doing the story, guys.
Wilds of Eldraine. We're doing this.
Yeah. Hey, guys.
This is our story episode, yep.
As much as this is about the Wilds of Eldraine, it felt more about... Most of it just happens in buildings.
Yes.
So it's kind of like... So the Throne of Eldraine actually spent most of its time in the wilds, and the Wilds of Eldraine spends most of its time inside throne rooms.
I have a note here.
Which is kind of interesting.
We didn't explore Eldraine, just small rooms with witches in them.
Yeah, exactly! I mean, don't get me wrong, we'll get to it, because I think this was basically Fetch Quest the set, right? And Magic feels like... This might be... what's it called when you lead with the... what's it called? Fucking... terminology. It's really early in the morning, guys, by the way. I've had an espresso, which I don't normally have.
It's 20 to 12.
I finish work at 4 a.m, Andy. Okay, this is early for me. Bury the lead. There we go.
Bury the lead.
Might be... And now I've forgotten what I was going to say. Fuck it. Great. Amazing.
So... much like the original Throne of Eldraine, this is a palate cleanser story from the last arc. So literally the last time we were in Eldraine, it was War of the Spark was the preceding set, it was the end of the Bolas arc, and then we went to a new plane with really bright flavour fantasy flavour that they mixed with Arthurian legend. That was a big half of it. That wasn't just a throwaway thing. Half of it was Arthurian legend. Half of it was the Wilds, the fairy tale set. And this time around, this is now the palette cleanser set for the Phyrexian, the latest Phyrexian arc.
We just use that basically. So you're telling me that Eldraine is the digestif of the Magic universe?
Yes, but this time around, I think they really just went, well, things are way too different now for it to be like totally bright and colourful. And there is some lighter elements, there is some darker elements. And things are obviously very different on Eldraine. But obviously it's not a new plane anymore either.
No. And also we didn't see enough of... Because we mostly focus on the court side of things, which, spoilers, there are no courts anymore. Phyrexia is sort of that. So as much as we did see Eldrick, similar to Arcavios, as much as we did go to the plane, we didn't see the plane as a whole.
Yes.
We very much focused... I mean, this isn't talking about... also, because the story was in book form, right?
Yeah, it was Kate Elliott.
Yeah, what was it? What the
Wilder Quest.
Huh?
The Wildered Quest. No.
What?
The what?
The book. What was the novel?
The Wildered Quest.
Wildered Quest. Thank you. Great. Good. We're doing well. Gosh. I
listened to that episode like an hour ago.
Funny. Yeah. So that was more of a focus on. Again, essentially Rowan and Will going on their own version of like the quest that you have to go to each of the courts, and kind of obviously they had the Garrick kind of bit in there, and we saw a lot of Oko and stuff. So it kind of we have a very similar thing here where we have our main character put on a quest, not the quest for the throne, so it doesn't necessarily have to go, court to court, even though that's kind of what happens anyway.
Sort of a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, but instead of it being human courts, it's the Fey courts.
Yes.
Because we see a couple of witches and we see the giant
castle. Yeah, the Wilds of Eldraine. So it's you're right. It's instead of the realms which service the throne, it's now the Wilds that service themselves in a way and have the kind of magic element and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. There is a lot going on in this story, whilst also not very much. They only gave Chaos Nor Rivera, who's back, 5 episodes to basically do 2 whole stories in. So Chaos Nor Rivera, I've made a couple of notes here. I actually did a bit of prep for this one. Over the past year of story stuff, I've just kind of gone, look at that! But like this one, I've actually done a bit of like looking up. So Chaos Nor Rivera got 10 stories across the 2 Innistrad sets. So 5 apiece, sure, but they only had to focus on 1 narrative apiece, right?
Yeah, imagine doing both of those sets in one.
Wouldn't have worked, right? And I know we had things to say. I think it's safe to say that Chaos Nor Rivera, whilst we don't like shit on writers, is maybe not one of our absolute favourites, but also the fact that they are a huge Magic player, they're a massive Magic fan, really active in community, and by all accounts, just really fucking cool. I think shines through, even though maybe their writing style isn't what we prefer in Magic.
Their character work, however, usually is very good. And that's actually kind of more important, I feel like, to make sure your characters, especially when they're new characters we haven't seen before, to get us on board with them and enjoy and like them and have them resonate a bit more. Getting that character work right is kind of more important than fleshing out a plane that we've already seen. Because we've already 100%. Got headcanon for what we see, and we also get the set to see what the plane looks like. So we've kind of got all of that filled in.
I think that's
what
really
are the people in the dialogue? What are they saying? How are they talking? Like, that kind of thing doesn't come across in a set. It comes across in the story, so it's kind of more important that lands. And I feel like...
I think you're really right. I think, because there were lots of new characters in Innistrad 3.0, which I think we sort of really loved at the time. They got 1 Capenna side story.
Yeah.
Which Making of a Man, something like that. The one about the train conductor. Do you know what I mean?
God, Capenna seems it was a long time ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. And they got all 10 of the March the Machine main stories.
Which we've already lauded.
We forget.
Great idea.
And also, let's just put this to bed now. I'm sure I'm going to contradict myself from what I actually said in those episodes. I always worry that I do this, because I think I'll say an opinion later on that actually, in the episodes, I didn't have.
You're so disingenuous, Andy, man.
Yeah, I don't. I'm just doing it for click. I was going to say clickbaits. Clout is what I mean.
Clout, yeah. Clout bait.
All right, do you got the clickbaits? Yes, Grandad. I think that people had this idea that they thought that the March of the Machine story is rushed and all this kind of thing. And there were elements of it where you think, oh, okay, now that's just happened. But the scope which Chaos and Rivera was trying to capture, and they really did, it did do the thing it needed to do. And they got 10 episodes, and I think they used them, because if you compare that to fucking 5 in Wilds of Eldraine,
God, it feels
with
like
the same scope of story, in some ways.
On by, right?
Like, I genuinely think they did real dirty with, like, the amount of episodes. Because we forget, I mean, hey, look, we haven't actually interviewed a writer ever. I know that the Vorthos cast do quite a bit, and there's a couple of other creators, Alpha Markov, for example, that have interviewed writers. And the balance and the push and pull between, is it the writer that drives the narrative, or is it the narrative team that asks things of the writer? There's always that balance. I can't, for the life of me, imagine that a professional award-winning writer like Chaos and Rivera would put 2 full A stories in
especially when typically, and they've done this for pretty much every other set, you do 5 main stories and 5 side stories.
Yeah, what do you reckon happened there?
We quite literally have two story arcs. One with a side character who's maybe, going to end up being quite important later. And then we've got the main set story where we deal with Rowan and Will's conflict between each other and how they deal with handling the realm. And you could have just done these 2 separate stories as 5 arcs that then meet in the middle at the end, because it felt very cutaway. Every time the story shifted away from one to the other, it felt very jarring because they were so far removed from each other. And it was only right at the end that they kind of coalesce. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to, again, throw Ashiok under the bus immediately. Throw extra names and stuff in where it just doesn't feel like they need to be there.
No.
It's like, well, you could remove that person and just focus on... You can hyper-focus it with this many stories on, like, maybe 1 or 2 characters and not feel like you're doing the set a disservice because you've got such a limited scope. Or you can do what they seem to have done, where say, well, you need to tell both of these 2 stories, try and wind them together, and the only way to do it is to go, fine, they have a meeting point at the end that we get to, so it makes sense from the narrative point of view that we're following these 2 different arcs, but these could have very easily been separate stories, and then seen the finale from one point, and then have the finale from on the Will and Rowan side, and then flesh out the end of what happens afterwards for Kellen in the fifth one, because again, the end, I think, out of everything, feels the most rushed, tacked on, and kind of throwaway, where the end is actually the more important. Like, well, where do we finish the story of this set? Where does it set up and go on from here? And we just kind of get, again, burying the lead here, we don't really get a lot of wrap up at the end. It doesn't feel like it wraps everything up in a nice tidy package. It kind of feels like the ends are just kind of left for you to go, yeah, well, that all happened, and it's like, what do you mean, and?
Yeah.
The story's over. Next set, let's
go.
It's
interesting, like, they figured this dovetailing out in the first set where they tried it. In Kaldheim, which was the first set to have main and side stories, I think I keep doubting myself on this as well, but I'm pretty sure that's true, so I've said it a couple of times. They figured it out. They had the Nico Ara stories, and they had the Phyrexian Kaya stories, and they were their own separate things. Yep. That then you went, holy shit, Nico's in the final battle.
Because he comes barreling in with all the angels coming up, and it makes sense.
Yeah. And they also did it in Brothers War, so yeah, it's interesting. Especially when the 2 plots of this are full plots, whereas sometimes what they've tried is they've had the A story, which is the through line, and then all the side stories are like individual pockets of day in the life, which we also love. Mm-hmm. These are 2 full things. I'm not going to do a breakdown. I've tried to change how I do the breakdowns of the stories, because if you're listening to this, you've listened to if you are the person who listens to this for an actual breakdown of the story, I am sorry. I do recommend the Vorthos cast or just reading the stories, but I think I'm just going to do a real synopsis of A and B real quick, just so we're all on the same page. So yeah, Kay Arsenal Rivera from Innistrad, Capenna, March Machines, and also a award-winning writer in their own right. There are also audio versions, which we can talk about a little bit if we have time. They're embedded on the story article pages in YouTube form, read by Harless Snyder and Natalie Creeder of the Magic Story podcast, the Magic Gathering Story podcast, which is the official now Wizards of the Coast Vorthos podcast, where they talk about all the story, which is nice that they're doing it, like stepping on all the rest of our toes a little bit, get to the party, but yeah, we've been doing this for 3 years and Vorthos cast is already older than that. YouTube audio stories, embedded in the pages, with artwork overlaid on top in very old school podcast audio style, the kind of thing which the Command Zone was doing, like, fucking 7 years ago.
Wizards will
catch up. They need to invest in an editor. It's like no shade on Harless and Natalie at all, but there are multiple instances of them saying a line and going, oh, sorry, I fluffed it, let me try that again, and then saying the same line, and they haven't cut it out. Wow, but they've obviously edited other bits, but you can hear page turns and all this kind of shit, and you're like, Wizards, man, throw these people a bone, like fucking edit out.
I know that they've probably done it as a throw to go, hey, let's, because they'll probably do they probably got leaned on to say, hey, what about folks that, find it difficult to read, or
I'm not a good reader. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I listened to them. You read them,
and I guess even from like a medical point of view, what if someone has poor eyesight or that kind of thing? Like, let's get it into another form, but they've clearly just done it kind of throwaway, and they haven't really.
It sounds like they had like a pop-up booth where I'm 1,000% sure that Hasbro can afford a fucking studio for these people.
It was clearly an afterthought. It's an afterthought to an afterthought, because the story again went down from 10 to 5 stories, so it's clearly an afterthought to go, hey, let's just try and get some lore out there, and then it was an afterthought to the afterthought, the lore of how they're going to present it and get it out.
Yeah. One step forward, half step back. But good that it's there, because I enjoyed it, and I hope they do it more, because I will end up listening to these rather than reading my thing. Anyway, now I've put the Kellen stories as the A story.
Absolutely is.
You, earlier on, you were like, the Will and Rowan.
Because technically it should be. The whole point is the planes dealing with the aftermath, essentially. Oh god, we're still using that terminology. But so the aftermath is over, but this is the aftermath of the aftermath, and that should have been the focus of the main story, is how Will and Rowan are going to handle dealing with the eternal sleep and their plane being in disarray, and instead they just leave it to this random little half-fae kid from the Shire to deal with, which makes no sense. They throw it to this random bit, and there's reasons why I like that, and we'll get to that later, but Kellen is the lead of the story, even though it shouldn't have been.
Alright, 15 minutes in, and we're going to do a fucking story synopsis for this set. God damn. I like doing a podcast once every month, but we've got a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Okay. A story, A-line story. Kellen, a young boy from a secluded village far from the castles of the realms, dreams of adventures and discovering the identity of his fey father, a fact that his nearly a witch mother has kept from him until the time is right. After coming into contact with Talion, the kindly lord of the Fae, who I think they kind of sandbag might be his dad, but it turns out isn't, right?
Yeah, you very much think that's going to be it.
Yeah. Talion sends Kellen on a quest to defeat 3 witch sisters: Agatha, the cannibal hag, Hilda, the Queen of Winter, and the wicked Ariette. Along the way, he teams up with Ruby, which is like a Red Riding Hood analogue, and an adventuring young woman searching for her lost brother, and the Ravnican Vidalcan, Troyan, as they kill Agatha, restore Hilda's faith in compassion, and facilitate the capture of Ariette by the guards of the new High King. Justice for fucking Agatha, man. They straight up murder her.
Yeah.
And, then
no one cares. And even the other sisters are like, well. She was a bit out there.
They straight up murder her. And then the other one they're nice to. And then Ariette, they're like, oh, well, she's going to be thrown in prison, despite the fact she's the worst one. Anyway, that... It made me laugh so much. Not at the time when they killed her, but when the other two, I was like, what the fuck? Anyway.
I mean, this one did eat people.
She was like a literal... whatever. I'll get into it. With each adventure, Kellen becomes more powerful, mastering his nerves and his fey light blades. I almost said lightsabers, and every time I read light blades, I read it as lightsabers.
They technically are more saber than blade.
And they do shoot out.
Yeah, they look more like scimitars.
Yes, but then they also have like a whip-like quality. Yeah. It's very much like how people used to think the Wanderer's sword worked before we got more characterization. Yes, indeed. Anyway, why the fuck are we keep... Anyway, after his quest is complete, his mother tells him the tale of her father and her meeting him. I'm going to say that again. This was the...
They just leave it in.
After his quest is complete, his mother tells him the tale of her and his father's meeting. A young fae named Oko.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun. At the close of the story, Kellen walks through an open path into the multiverse, blah, blah, blah. The B story, Will and Rowan are sparkless and struggling to unite an Eldraine broken by the Phyrexian invasion.
Interesting. Are they sparkless? We'll get back to that.
And now the plane is suffering a hex known as the Slumber. Will has assumed the mantle of High King, much to Rowan's protest, as they have not officially completed the Trials of the Realms to earn that title. Seems a little bit nitpicky, but there. After Rowan displays a reckless burst of power in a skirmish with a fallen knight called Imodane, the twins' relationship is once again fraught, and Rowan decides to leave the path of diplomacy in search of power. Her quest leads her to a derelict castle, Ardenvale, her and Will's old home, where she finds her aunt, the witch Ariette, who reveals that Will and Rowan's birth mother was a fourth witch sister. It is also revealed in both plots that the slumber affecting Eldraine was the result of the witch's attempt, along with Talion, to stop the Phyrexian invasion, but the spell got out of control. Ariette brings Rowan into her plan to use the slumber to control the denizens of the plane to bring about peace, all under the tutelage of Ashiok. Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Not that we knew that they were here the entire time.
Both plots converge as Kellen and Ruby and Will's forces arrive at Ardenvale, resulting in a battle which results in Ashiok's defeat, planeswalking away, Ariette's capture, and the cementing of Rowan's turn away from Will, citing that she would only ever be patronised and tolerated by her brother for her actions. Will, even in battle, seemingly only ever wants to help Rowan and bring about peace through diplomacy, but he is clearly afraid of Rowan's power and doesn't value her way either. At the close of this plot, Ashiok returns to the plane and takes Ariette away from her cell. To another plane, maybe? Rowan is still missing, and Will looks set to unite Eldraine once more, potentially. Fucking hell, that's a lot. But the thing is, though, it's a lot of story, but also nothing really happens.
And we also gloss over so much.
Gloss over everything.
My biggest issue with the way that they've done this is that when we haven't really had a set that's kind of shown Will and Rowan doing anything other than being squabbling siblings, which was kind of, the main focus of their arc in Strixhaven, they suffer for having absolutely no character development in this.
Thank you. Now, here's my disagreement. I'm going to let you carry on, but here's my disagreement. I think they do have character development, but it's really boring.
I feel like it's also just very, very truncated, right? You see them at this point, and then this point, and then this point. There's no middle ground to see how it changes from one to the other. It's just it's statement. It's showing, it's telling, not showing. It just tells you that this is how Will looks now. He's got the stubble and he's getting more wise. And I'm like, yeah, but I want to see that. I don't want it just be a throwaway. And this is catching up with them, and then look at how much more moody Rowan is, and then look at how much more willing she is to be part of Ariette, and then actually I just want to go and do my own thing anyway. It's like, if you're giving us a full set of kind of like how their minds are working, the turmoil they're going through, the weight and the responsibility for ruling a plane or being the king without anyone actually believing in you, and then seeing that doubt in Will's mind, we never see that. It's all kind of you have to kind of headcanon it all. And that I find very frustrating because we don't see it point by point, the progression. We just kind of have to go, okay, this is like, Will is now blue-white. And then in the set you see now Rowan is now black-red. And you can kind of see the points as the stories go, but you never get it. You never get enough of a point of view, I feel like, of them to see that progression happening bit like slowly and surely, instead of it just kind of being like, and now I feel like this.
Yeah, do you know how I feel about it? I think you're 100% right. And to develop my ideas into yours a little bit as well, because I felt slightly differently about it, but I see your point. It's also a thing of, yet again, the storyline has focused on Rowan and not Will. Every time we have the twins. Like, in the first Eldraine, this is something when I listened back to the old episode, I was like, oh, fuck yeah, they did that, didn't they? They had nothing about Will in any of the promotion. It was all Rowan, to the point where they thought Will was actually going to be the missing Kenrith of the story, not their dad. So they focused yet again on Rowan, and they've made it all about her, which is fine, because she's potentially a more interesting character. But what would have been way more interesting is because they've made her red-black and they've made him blue-white. So it's like, okay, still impulsive and wise, but now he's trying to be the white unifier and she's the black sort of selfish control freak.
Yeah, she's being more narcissistic and he's being more for the people.
But his character is still, like, Chaos and Rivera still sets him up to have a false path as well. It seemingly wasn't going to be Rowan's wrong, Will's right, because Will was assuming a mantle he didn't earn and trying to live in an old Eldraine, like trying to live in the old Eldraine when Eldraine had been changed. It's now a bunch of like Marauders and Raiders, whereas he's now trying to keep the realms going. And then she's obviously trying to do things through power, which we know just from any media is not the way to do things, but also trying to control people through the slumber. But then at that point, when Rowan starts to go down the dark path, because it is the dark path, because she's damaged because of the death of their parents in the Phyrexian War, and it's a result of trauma, as is Will's responses, it really quickly turns, as soon as she meets Ariette in Ardenvale, to, oh, Rowan's now evil and Will's now good. And you're like, fuck, hang the fuck on.
The way they present it as well is very much, it's like, I'm doing this for my people. It's the only way it feels very... And maybe it's true of her character, but it's very short-sighted. And Rowan is a very short-sighted person, but it's slowly but surely they're moulding Rowan to just be Chandra Part 2, and they're slowly moulding Will to be Jace Part 2, because it feels very much like at some point when he became the Living Guild Pact, or, you know, in general, when he was having his Ravnican time, he felt very Azorius.
Yeah.
You know, and at no point did we get a blue-white Jace, but we very much could have at some point.
Yeah.
And it felt very forced that, and you can justify it a little bit in the fact that she was enamoured and kind of almost glamoured by Ariat at the end, because she does this whole, I'm not your mother, because that's another thing that we thought that she was going to be. Like, we thought that Ariat was going to be the mother of the two of them. It turned out, no, it was her sister. But she essentially plays that aunt role within the same aspect of being, come with me and help our people. Right? And the thing that annoys me about the Will's side of the story is that, yes, okay, you could call it the fallacy of him trying to take the king's role when he hasn't done his quest, but you can't do that anymore because the realms don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a new process, and the fact that Rowan at one point turns around and goes, yeah, but you can't be kings, you didn't do the quest, and it's like, but what does that have to do with the price of sugar on a Tuesday?
Yeah, like someone needs to rule the fucking country.
Yeah, like clearly, like it doesn't like surely develop with, you know, and I guess having that progressive mindset isn't very Rowan anyway, and it does just feel very much somewhere between Chandra and Scarlet Witch of like, I've got this great enormous power and I don't know how to control it. And instead of seeking aid to calm it down, I'm actually just going to stubbornly go, well, why can't I use this power? Maybe I can do it and get away with it and hold my shit together still. It's been seen a long time.
I remember when we were looking at the Strixhaven stories, and we had a lot of problems with the structure of those stories, but one of the things we thought about Will and Rowan, it was that they're just not very likeable.
No.
I really wanted them to just fucking get on. They can have like strife. It's much more interesting when you have allies that are at odds with each other than having people just going, well, fuck you, well, fuck you. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah. Also, when Will says, I had a plan when he's fighting Imodane, and it's like, but you never say what it was, so I don't believe that you did.
You got your ass beaten. What was the plan?
Yeah, and also when they was like, everyone's like really scared of her, and I'm like, she didn't actually hurt anybody. She just exploded a mountain.
Everyone knows that she's a spark mage. Yeah.
It felt very what I was supposed to feel felt very much like you're telling me what I should feel, but you're not giving me reasons to feel it.
I don't think this is a Chaos nor Rivera problem.
No.
I think this is a Magic problem. I don't know that they've ever had a plan for Will and Rowan, and now they're just going down.
They want her now to be an evil
Aggie
person.
teens.
And also, so the reason I pulled out the Are They Sparkless is because they're so at odds now that they need to be unified to Planeswalk,
Oh,
right?
sure, okay.
So there's a chance that their Planeswalkers Spark still... I mean, I know that they list them both as legendary creatures with the symbol, but I feel like that's a little bit... It's annoying because from a design point of view, it kind of gives away that they don't have their spark working anymore because like, we've got the broken spark symbol. It's like, but maybe narratively...
Well, maybe their spark is broken because they're not unified.
Dissonance. Yeah, this is what I'm thinking. And maybe they should have had broken sparks from the beginning and they only are able to planeswalk when they're unified.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. It's very hard.
It is hard. I have no problem with her being impulsive and broody and like red-black. And I have no problem with him necessarily being white blue, because white isn't always a good colour and black, as we say, isn't always a bad colour. No. That's the whole point. And that's where some of my frustration lies with how they've been treated.
Yeah, did they actually have those? Because in the card, does it list it as white blue because of how Wooburg works? But
I don't know.
It should be blue white because he is predominantly a blue character with a tinge of white, but they won't have the symbols that way around because of the way that the colour order works. I'm not
sure. But I think my point is that it's so like I'm not gonna like gatekeep trauma for people because that's ridiculous. I'm not going to be too heavy about it either, but like I lost a parent when I was very young as well, and I have an older brother, and I can definitely see that different people within a same family setting can have trauma in different ways, and this goes for anyone who's lost anyone. So like this isn't just like because mine happened to be a parent. And my brother reacted to things very differently and kind of went a little bit insular. And I went a little bit more like family based. And like you can definitely see that's the Rowan and Will kind of thing in different ways. Like in this context, Rowan is going a little bit more insular by going towards a family member outside of the established unit that she was already in.
She didn't know that she was going to the family
very
member.
True. Whereas Will is trying to be uniting and like strength in numbers kind of
Constantly
thing.
Constantly brings up the two other siblings and how he's doing it for them.
So I totally get that is how different people react, and there's no right way to grieve the loss of whatever else. My problem is that this exact setup has been seen in a lot of media a lot of times. And this I have too much power, no one understands me idea. As a child of the 90s and the 2000s, I don't feel like I'm out of base of saying this. This kind of emo girl aesthetic is great. But I think there's a lot of writers that are our age that now they're writing characters, they're all this kind of like broody skater girl. And I'm like, yeah, but we've sort of seen this a lot. It's Jean Grey. It's Eleven from Stranger Things.
Yeah,
it's,
and because you never got the 5 stories focusing on it, there isn't a lot of nuance to it. You just kind of have to take it at face value. Like,
it's the nuance is missing.
We don't get to hear the internal monologues of them processing and going through and seeing. Like, you could start with Rowan. Like, she at no point does she ever feel regretful or rueful, sorry, I should say, of exploding a mountain. You know, at no point do you see her debating or having a back and forth with herself about how she should be handling it. All we see is like a little couple of bursts between her and Will, and each time she says something, goes, she knows she's gone too far, but she knows that's what she was supposed to do. You know, like it still feels very much like they're teenagers.
Yes,
and that unfortunately by this point is boring because we need to see, as you say, they seem to not have a plan. They could have very easily given us 5 stories of Will and Rowan and gone, this is where we need them to be at the end of this story. We need Will to be set up to be a really strong kingly figure, and we need Rowan to feel like an absolute outcast and no one understands her. But they just didn't. They skipped. There was a couple of steps that were missed to get there because they were trying to cram too much in. And it's interesting because we've spent a lot of time talking about Will and Rowan, where coming out of the back of these 5 stories, I don't give a flying fuck about them. I'm more focused now on the much more interesting and more like Helen's. I think this is the thing. They realised they needed to throw in a bone to the people that wanted the story to feel as part of the greater multiverse.
Yeah.
And Will and Rowan was our hook to that because we've been following them for a little while. But it's almost like that was the afterthought because, hey, let's focus on this new character, Kellen, because actually quite compelling and interesting.
Yeah, like it's like just to wrap up, I guess I'll chat on Will and Rowan. Obviously, we'll talk about it a bit more, but just our thoughts on them before we move on is that every time we see these twins, whether it was in, Battle Bond or the original Eldraine, these characters have been around for a long time now, like 5 years. Maybe even a little bit longer. They always seem to set things up that they never pay off. Where's the Garrick years? Where's
Garrick in general?
Man? Yeah. Like, where's their training under Oko and Garrick and what was their time on Battle Bond world like? All this kind of thing because they're unified there. They have to be because that's the whole fucking thing. And apparently they're very good at it. It's just there's lots of stuff. Strixhaven. What were their strengths in that setting?
Where was even their time in Kylum on their own timeline? We're still not exactly sure. Did they do Eldraine then go to Kylum and then do Strixhaven afterwards? Like, I mean, I know technically if we look into it,
that
does
is
justify
what it's meant to be in,
But it doesn't.
Anyway.
It feels messy.
I
Will and Rowan, what are they doing with them? They haven't proven they can do something decent with them yet. They've left them at a point of, okay, maybe they can build on their characters from here out and it'll be quite interesting, but I do feel like it's just going to go further towards the cliche of brooding monarch and misunderstood outcast.
Yeah.
And also I don't like the fact we've got another Ubermensch kind of fucking character who can explode mountains and unfortunately isn't in a position to do anything with it apart from be a stompy around brat.
So she's a spark mage?
She's a spark mage, yes.
Which is electricity?
Yeah.
Are sparks the same as electricity? Because there's lots of artwork with her sparking around like Jubilee from X-Men.
Spark smiths typically in Magic are artificers because they typically are using
because sparks come from smashing bits of metal together.
Yeah.
My question is, if I shoot a bolt of lightning at you, is the bolt of lightning the extreme version of making some sparks?
Well, the way I justify it is that spark in Pokemon is an electric type move, so it's clearly made out of electricity.
Oh yeah, well that makes sense. Yeah, done. All right, cool. My worries have been abated.
Let's not metaverse the idiosyncrasies of flame magic, red mat. Yeah, I don't know.
Is snow the same as ice?
Well, lightning bolt, right? It's one of the initial first spells ever in Magic, and it was from it's a lightning bolt.
Yeah, and it comes from a spark mage
flame on a flame card.
Yeah. Anyway,
should lightning bolt be magic?
I just don't know. If I'm a water mage, do I then get to control rain?
Do you then get to control blood? It's like an avatar.
It's an avatar.
It's an avatar.
I don't. Anyway, I would much rather, as moving on to Kellen and Ruby and their quest, I would have much rather had this just be the story, and then in the background you hear them talk about the squabbling royals who, one of them is now an outcast, and then have the big bad revealed to be Rowan.
Yeah, maybe you hear a boom in the background, you see this mountain exploding from fucking miles away, and you're like, what the hell just happened over there?
And then
it's
you get
not
fed,
until you go
get
to the
drip
side.
fed, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so we're moving on to Kellen. Now, Kellen kind of fulfills, this is what I put in. So Kellen is a brand new character. He's a young boy from the sticks, as you sort of said in a... I don't know if you said this on air, I can't remember. He's essentially from the Shire.
Yeah. I mean, it's Orange Shire is where he's from.
Now, this is my first big problem with Kellen. And I like Kellen, but I like him in the same way I like Teo Verada in War of the Spark.
Right.
Where he's a new, fresh-faced character, where he's the fish out of water character.
Yes, the Harry Potter of the world.
But he's the fish out of water character in a world where he is part of that world.
Yeah.
So my problem is, now that we don't have planeswalkers in abundance, we need new characters to be the, hey, what's going on in this plane, and follow them around. And they have to be ostensibly, apart from open paths, obviously, from the realm that they're in.
Sure.
But does this mean that every plane we have to say now has areas where all the stuff that we know and love about the plane doesn't touch it? Because as far as in my head, the way that I imagine planes, unless it's explicitly stated otherwise, like on Dominaria, where it's triple the size of Earth, in my mind, planes are mostly very contained. They're like the size of, say, the UK.
So I think some, yes. I want to say some, yes, because there are some, like, Innistrads and Theros that don't have a traditional spherical, what's it called?
Like, they're not a planet.
Constitution, yeah. They're not a round planet. And Ravnica is known to be huge. Dominaria is known to be huge. Mirrodin specifically is very, very small. I feel like, for the most part, a plane is probably going to be more like the size of, say, I don't know, America.
Because he, all the way throughout the story, his whole thing is that he doesn't know about a lot of what's going on. He has this parentage that he wants to know about, and his mum, whilst not hiding him from things, has never pushed him to explore, and is kind of she's given up that life. So everything that he knows about Eldraine comes from in-world stories and legends.
He's a kid from the village, right?
But this is my problem. I get it. I totally get that. But he's part of the plane. If I am playing Magic the Gathering, the last thing I want to do is be like, well, I know more about this fucking kid about his own plane.
Well, I guess, one, you're older than he is. So
what's that got to do with it?
So technically you've had longer to learn about the plane that he's in anyway. 2, he's been sheltered...
He's not 5.
Well, imagine, so... I mean, the whole point is that, it doesn't feel contrived to me that he is... One, the plane is set up to be that the Fae side of things is kept very separate from the human side of things.
Right.
There is
he doesn't even know about, like, knights and giants and shit.
No, because for the most part, it even says in the opening... In the very opening of the story, it specifically says, "Let me fucking find you."
But this is my problem. Is that it seems very meta. It's like you can't have storybooks in the world of the storybooks. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Because, like, on Ravnica, I'd be so pissed off if we were following a character that was like, Azorius Law Mage? Well, what's the Azorius?
No, but that's because every part of the plane is part of the Guild Pact, right? Whereas there are certain planes, like...
But they're the realms and the wilds. And, like, the wilds was the mystery. Granted, in Eldraine, the wilds are meant to be mysterious, but but people were aware of the mystery.
Yeah, but they're not sure what's within it, you know?
I guess.
1 second, let me try and find...
I don't know, man. It just feels like he's the only one that doesn't know. Like, as soon as he goes to, like, the next town over,
it feels a bit pushed, because especially when he meets Ruby, and there's such a...
And she knows everything.
There's such a disparity between her, like, world knowledge and her experience, and kind of does very much feel like a... Yeah, there were certain times that I was like, my God, this kid's fucking lucky.
Yeah!
And this is where the truncated aspect of it really kind of happens, where between, like, story 2 and 3, he goes from being I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing, to having stories and things written about him, and now he's famous. And I'm like, he hasn't fucking done anything yet!
What I will say about that, so I'm going to backtrack immediately. I don't love the premise of him not knowing anything. What I will say is actually to read, and as a representation of Eldraine as a setting, because he is creating a quest. He is on a quest line. So he is living the fantasy of high fantasy, right? It's the Luke Skywalker thing, it's the Frodo Baggins thing of coming from a small town, knowing about the stories, and then living it. I get the whole premise. All I'm saying is, Nathan, is that in the world of Magic the Gathering as a setting and as a delivery for lore, can you be from the plane and not have any idea about what happens on your plane? After we've had so much stories about planeswalkers who have to be the ones going into discovery.
Isn't that the interesting thing, though? Because doesn't that make the planes feel larger? When normally we have these gallivanting planeswalkers who know everything about the plane already, we actually get to have a low to the ground story where you can actually legitimately believe that maybe everyone doesn't know everything, and maybe like the Phyrexian invasion didn't actually affect the entire plane. It only affected certain parts of it. And yeah, it does diminish a little bit from the multiverse-wide plane, the multiverse-wide invasion, which already we had our own, incredulity about, because you can't just invade the entire multiverse at once.
Infinite. So you're just invading infinitely.
Yeah, you can't just do that. So, I mean, I do like the fact that quite literally justified, there is a village far from all of this. It lies at the edge of the realm, so remote that in day-to-day life, the names of kings and queens never cross the lips of its residents. The fact that he doesn't even know about the Phyrexians because they only targeted the bits that were important of the plane, which, again, how the fuck did you know that, Elishnorn? I feel they try and justify it, but I do know what you mean. If it feels a little bit, it removes you a little bit from it when you go, but I already knew that. So why the fuck don't you know that? So yeah, it kind of it's hard it's hard for you to
it's only
relate to a character that knows less than you do when you're kind of going into a world where
the second time that we've been to this plane, and already we're having to play like devil's advocate of like, well, what about people who don't know about Eldraine? There's only been one other set.
Yeah.
You can do there's 300 cards already. You can do the fucking reading. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I get
whatever.
I get it.
So he's fine.
He's cool.
He's cool. He's got his Fey Blades. He's Oko's son.
And I kind of believe his narrative. I believe his voice. I believe his tone. When he's saying things, I kind of believe what he's saying, and I can get behind it. It feels a little bit. It's a little twee. It's a little bit like as long as we have friendship, we can do this. You know?
This is the light side of fantasy versus the dark side of the fantasy.
Yeah, this isn't very Innistrad at all.
Yeah,
you know? And we don't. And as much as they do push. Agatha just into her own pot, which again is very reminiscent of Hansel and Gretel, where they pushed the witch into the oven.
That whole first. So they go to kill the three witches. So remind me, why does Talion, the kindly lord, why does he send him on this quest?
So we find out about 4 stories in that Talion was the 4th orchestrator of the Great Slumber. And I quickly tried to look this up earlier because I was pretty fucking sure that Rankle started it with the ring.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to go back and read that at some point because I guess he just happened to do the same spell that they were doing anyway. Or what I think he maybe started the spell, or was the ring given to Torbrand from Talion initially? Either way, somehow the sleep happened. Talion was involved with him and the 3 witches, Talion's quite specifically listed as being non-binary. And the reason why we find out is if you look in the other cards throughout the set, Obira, I believe her name is the Dreaming Duelist.
Yes.
And it's listed Talion's child is part of the slumber, and everyone always and people were starting to think that, okay, maybe, Kellen's the son, or maybe it's Rankle that's the son, and no, it's actually Obira, because she's listed as like the high, like Fey Princess or something in Fairy Duel or whatever, the fight, the -3/-3 card instant from the main set.
God, you know the set so well already.
Well, I mean, it's me, what do you want? So Talion basically found a way to basically kind of not manipulated, but was the 4th person that needed to make the sleep happen. It also then affected their daughter, so they have then recruited, and they initially recruited Imodaine to do it, because we see after Rowan shits up a mountain and Imodaine goes, "Fuck that," for a laugh and runs off.
Yeah.
Runs directly into the realm of Talion. Talion, charges her with the same quest that Kellen gets to. Doesn't get past Agatha, because Agatha's protected by all these witch stalkers, and the brother of Ruby, I can't remember what his name is now.
Peter.
Off the top of my head. That's it, Peter. Oh, Peter and the Wolf, that's so clever.
Peter and the Wolf, and he's also a huntsman.
Yeah.
So it's like got that wolf huntsman
exactly.
motif.
The thing I like about this set is that they've flexed... anyway, to finish off the point, Talion needed this quest needed people to go on this quest to help them bring his daughter back from the fates, from the slumber, because Ashiok and Ariat had kind of gone a bit too far with it.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like Agatha cares much about the slumber anymore. As long as
she just wants a nice dude.
She wants nums, and then who was the other? Hildia just wants to be by herself because she's so. And again, that felt a little bit.
Well, she's the Ice Queen.
Yes.
There's lots of. I mean, obviously Frozen.
It feels a little bit too pushing. Yeah, again, that whole. The cold never bothered me anyway kind of feeling. It feels very much like it's leaning into that of, I'm just by myself, and it's only but you're just lonely, and she goes, oh, you're so right, I am. It's like, oh god, fuck off.
It
feels a little bit, again, with the only having 5 stories and having to split each of those 5 stories between the Will and Rowan bit and the Kellen and the antagonists. No single character, apart from Kellen, I feel like gets enough of a rounding out of his character and justification of what he's doing for me to go, yes, I feel like you're not just cookie cutter story of the day character.
Yeah, but what I like about the the A/B story, however we're going to do it, the Kellen storyline, is that when you read The Wildered Quest, the story was absolutely about Will and Rowan and Oko trying to find their dad who's an elk and them going to the wilds for all that kind of stuff. There was actually one of the criticisms of it, I think at the time, was that, and it's kind of happened again, but in a slightly different way, the cards showed all of the different fairy tale tropes. The storyline didn't. It was just, this is the single story that happens to be in this fantasy world.
Well, the cauldron bit, right, was a bit...
Sure.
Maybe.
But in this one, if you were to say if we were to just kind of scalpel out all the Will and Rowan stuff, because that, again, is the same sort of thing, and just look at the Kellen stuff, it is, they're hitting beat
hit
for beat.
After hit after hit.
And you can see
Jack and the Beanstalk.
They're having loads of fun just doing, like, Kellen is going on. He is walking through a storybook.
Oh my god, I've just realised this is basically just Magic Kingdom Hearts.
But sort of fine.
Because Kellen is basically Sora and he just jumps between each world, each time solving their individual
They go up a
plight.
beanstalk, they fight a witch that's got a cauldron, they fight a witch who's the Ice Queen, they fight a witch who's the, evil stepmother.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of thing. They see giants, they fucking fight a goose, they get a golden egg, all these things.
Oh god, the goose, man. They do like a full paragraph of this goose.
Not the goose mother.
No, but scary. Well, imagine if he'd find that he's scared enough of this. Before we
This
even get to the giant
goose.
goose, he's like, I've lived with geese. And it's basically like, fuck geese. Geese are the worst things ever. And I'm like,
as someone who lives on the water, geese are fucking
geese
arseholes.
are awful, man.
Swans are also not great.
Awful birds.
Neither are coots. Moorhen are fine. Moorhens are fine.
Yeah.
Moorhens are like, so if like swans are sort of the graceful versions of geese in my headcanon, coots are the bastard version of moorhens. Moorhens are super chill, and then coots are like, ah!
There's a bird on the look. It is black, it is white, it's a moorhen.
Which is weird, because moorhens are the ones with the red plumage. Yeah. And coots are the ones with the white.
Yeah, which is interesting.
Anyway, swans and geese bastards.
Yeah. So they did hit that fairy tale aspect of it really, really well. We didn't get the gingerbread house aspect. So it was the living sweets.
There are so many. So there are some motifs, and I wrote this down. It's amazing you touched on that. That's so funny because there are so many motifs that they do not hit, despite the fact they go through each one. They say the hut. I think they say smells sweet. Or something.
Yeah, but they don't really nail it down.
They don't do any evil sweets or otherwise.
No.
Any sort of like sweet and bakery motifs.
They could have also done a breadcrumb thing as well, but they didn't.
They touch on fairies and pranksters as pranksters, I should say, because obviously the whole thing is about fairies. But they do the fairy prankster thing like once in one sentence. They don't do anything about gingerbread. They don't do anything about foxes.
True, we don't see Sir Ginger at all.
There's nothing about foxes.
And that's actually a heavy part of the set. You see foxes and elf foxes. We'll get to that when we do our
and they don't do elves at all.
Yeah, but I feel like in Magic they've kind of separated because elves feel more into the. They don't feel fey. They feel more humanoid. I feel like elves feel like normal society. Same with goblins. Goblins don't feel like Goblins and orcs are very far removed in terms of orcs feeling more like berserkers and barbarians, whereas the goblins feel more like the idiots. As we've said,
no dragons either. I've just thought of this.
Well, no, and there was no. There's a lot of that. Yeah, I mean, was there many dragons in the original Eldraine? There was only a few, if I remember correctly. Corvold. We never see Corvold.
In the storyline, there's a blue dragon that flies above Castle Ardenburg.
Yeah, but we don't see him. We don't see the. Again, we'll talk about this when we get to the flavour picks. There's also the Gideon. What's his name's not Gideon. It's something else. Obviously, it's not Gideon because Gideon's the main character.
Gideon's name is Gideon.
But he's somebody who goes to a party and then has to reveal himself as a dragon mage.
Oh, in the new set.
Yeah, he's basically
there's loads of characters.
There's
loads of the thing we miss out with the side stories. We're bouncing around now, but this is it. I think this half of the story, for all of it being a little bit light and a bit like throwaway, is actually way more fun than the side story, than the A story. There are loads of characters that we don't get any fleshed out of.
Keep printing 35 fucking legendary creatures.
This is true.
You can't get all of them,
but they at least gave some of them in like different stories and things. So yes, they do all the greatest hits. I think they don't. Again, because of time, and they're trying to pack 2 stories in 5 episodes, they don't spend anywhere near enough time on any of it.
No.
Yorvo turns up again. He's King of the Giants.
Yeah, he's good that he pops up. He's just there. They're just having a party up. So that whole scene, by the way, when they're going up to the Giant Realm, that I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, Giants aren't evil.
The fact they have to deal with, because they're dancing, they have to, with every stomp of the dance, they have to kind of jump to predict it.
Yeah.
Now, that's really fun.
Very fun.
I like that a lot. I love the bit, remind me of his name, the Vidalcan dude.
Troyan.
I really liked his interaction. What I hated was you go from episode 3 that he's in, you go to episode 4, he's gone.
Yeah.
They don't even mention him passing or leaving the party, as it were.
He gives them the frog potions that help them out all the time. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. What they did with the story of Canon's really, really good. But again, it just felt like it's snap cut too many times without then a little bit of build up. Because I think it's between that one and the next that they go to the village and they're doing a Punch and Judy show, and it's of the two of them.
And the Punch and Judy thing is the thing. Although it's not Punch and Judy, I should say puppetry and kind of mechanical storytelling is how I'm going to phrase it, but like was a lot of part of the marketing this time around.
Yeah,
all the trailers were like paper cutout stories, right?
And and obviously their bonus sheet is storybook artwork.
Yeah.
So they want to play this as these are all fairy tales, and it does feel way more fairy tale-y than the original Eldraine. Because even though the original Eldraine did the first hit of all the three little pigs and the big bad wolf and kind of thing, the actual story itself, as you said, didn't focus on any of that.
It was also one of the first sets to use proper showcases, which was the storybook showcase.
Yeah, which was obviously stunning. And they do that
Interesting, because you said in the original episode it was too busy.
It was too busy. But now I look back at it, I'm like, more business.
Yeah, there have been other showcases that were way more busy.
The Ravnica border and everything, I'm like, yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. So I'm kind of into it. I mean, again, it shows that for what we saw from the Canon side story, it was a shame we didn't get that kind of progression on the Will and Rowan. The Will and Rowan felt like an afterthought, even though it should be the lead-in. And again, the Canon side felt a little bit more well delivered. Again, I think it's also nice that by the time he gets to the end of it, he doesn't even need Talion to tell him about his dad. He's like, you know what? If it's time to know, it's time to know.
He trusts his mum.
I don't need you to tell me.
Yeah.
You know, and so his mum does end up. I think it was a shame that he ended up not being Talion's kid, because it turns out he's a Fae. He's half Fae, but from a different plane. And then also there's a bit of canon confusion at the end of, he says that, so timey-wimey stuff, right, of how old Kellen is, and then whether or not Oko's first trip to Eldraine would have been when he met his mum, because I'm pretty sure his first trip to Eldraine was during the Wilded Quest.
Because he wanted to know about the realms.
And then he's... so what's being canoned out and what's being retconned, you know?
So yeah, Kellen has to be 15 at least.
Easy.
And so are we saying that... Because we didn't... No, we did, because...
So that's the thing. Is Oko's first visit... Was he lying in the Wilded Quest?
When was the Wilded Quest? Because we talk about Rowan's timeline.
Will and Rowan haven't aged more than maybe 5 years at most between
they haven't.
And also maybe being Garruk. Again, similar timeline, maybe 15, 16 at least, in the original Eldraine. Going from that to where we are now, they're probably about 21, maybe 23.
Garruk is post Chainveil Curse, but then gets immediately glamoured by Oko. Yeah, that's weird.
You know what I mean? So this maybe that's why they're avoiding... Because basically, Will and Rowan fuck the timeline up too much, because they just decided to chuck them in and then kind of figure them back into the timeline. I don't know. Figured them back in. Yeah. Fuck. Man, I don't do coffee. My brain is going 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, you're a tea drinker. You had an espresso.
My mouth goes 60 miles an hour, but it's almost like they're out of sync with each other by a frame or two.
Right, where's Oko from?
We don't know.
Do we not know?
Doesn't say.
Is it going to be a new player?
So the whole point is that...
He's going to be in Thunder Junction, whatever the fuck it's called.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, right? So I've written a couple of things as we've been talking, and one of them was when Kellen finds out about his dad. Does Kelly... change it to Kelly. Does Kellen go and find his father and find a cowboy instead of a Fae? He goes like... Wait, you're a finger gunner now?
Kill.
Yeah. So, yeah, we don't know, because he says that Oko told his mum, but it's a name that she's long since forgotten. I'm like, well, clearly it didn't matter that much then, love, did it?
It's probably something like, Equilor. It's just too important.
Still don't know where Garrick's from as well. There's a load of characters we don't know where. We
still don't know where Garrick is from.
No. We know his first planeswalk was to Chandelier, but that's all we know. And weirdly enough, that comes up very recently on the Secret Lair Baseball card edition, because his original plane and then original planeswalk are on the back of all of them.
And is the question mark?
No, it just says unknown.
Oh,
for
interesting.
Original plane. Yeah,
that's nice.
Yeah. So they still keep that within it, which is kind of interesting, because we know everyone else is. Obviously, we know Vryn and all of the other planeswalkers, because they're boring and from Ravnica and Dominaria and things like that.
How do we feel? I think we've got a couple of bits to wrap up. Mm-hmm. How do we feel about the Omen Paths being sort of more utilised? So we've got a Ravnican Vidalcan.
I like the fact that we see more, because again, it gets to a certain ambivalence or omnipotence of planeswalkers, of where even though they're the fish out of water on the plane, they can automatically just go, oh, bye. And also, I've seen all these 17 other planes. For most of the folks we're going to see, this is going to be their first excursion.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see someone from a citywide plane like Ravnica do so well. What he says about it is like, mate, this place is full of adventure. Home's boring as hell.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting to see it's a Vidalcan. We don't see a lot of And it's not your typical kind of Dovin Barn kind of Vidalcan. Like, he's a bit more outgoing, he's a bit more exuberant, and it's quite nice. As you say, he just randomly has 2 frog potions. And it's kind of interesting. I think he trades one off saying, like, oh, there's probably way more interesting things here and I can always go back and get more. I mean, he never tells us how long he's been there, or where he came from, or whether or not he can get back. Do Omen Paths stay open once you go through them?
Yeah.
And can you just go straight back again?
And like, as we said, so obviously after War of the Spark, funnily enough, this came up last time in Eldraine. War of the Spark meant that Ravnica absolutely knew about the existence of Planeswalkers.
Yes.
Because they had a Planeswalker war happen on their plane.
And they've also, I think they've known for a while anyway, because it's been such a hub of Planeswalker.
Sure, but like the
anyway.
everyday person, right?
Yeah.
Now knows about Planeswalkers. And now the multiverse, at least the planes that got invaded before the plan could continue on, now have to know about the existence of other planes.
Other realms, or at least, I mean, they still call it realms in Eldraine, because obviously they don't... So we're still not at a point of where planes have sent scouting parties through when the Omen Pass. They've come back and they're able to report and then spread that news plane-wide.
Sure.
Maybe on Ravnica, the next time we go there, it will deal with the fact that maybe Ravnica has way more Omen Paths and maybe they're way more connected. I mean, and who knows? It does make for more interesting storytelling than just having a bunch of Planewalkers that can do whatever
It also
they want.
gives us characters that, for all intents and purposes, they're only not a Planeswalker for lack of a spark.
Yeah.
So, like, for example,
they are walking planes.
Well, Troyan, as you said, he's not a Vidalcan as like, so Dovenbarn was a Kaladeshi Vidalcan, but even the Vidalcans on Ravnica, they tend to be Azorius mages or Simic, so they're obviously very stoic anyway. That is what Vidalcans are.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's like every group and society has people that don't fit into it.
Is he a guildless Vidalcan?
Yeah.
Probably.
If he had a spark, he would absolutely want to piss off and go to other planes and search for adventure. Yeah. So yeah, it is interesting. And I think it's nice to maybe just keep it to 1 or 2 characters. I also love the idea that because of the fantasy setting of most planes, no one bats an eye at this pointy-eared blue guy. Everyone's just like, he's a fae, he's some sort of fae.
I like the idea that one day someone's going to turn around to a Vidalcan and be like, wait, so how many fingers have you got? Oh, okay, he's from Kaladesh. He's the Kaladeshi one.
He's the steampunk one.
Yeah, exactly.
Fix my car, mate.
Wow.
Oh my god.
Immediately went.
How fucking much money can mechanics from Kaladesh and Nuka...
But you can industrially revolutionise, for better or for worse, every plane that isn't industrially
Well, I was thinking the cars on Capenna, which are maybe, even though they're...
Imagine if you drive a limousine through an Omen Path, you just come busting through in a Strad.
But, like, so you have Kamigawa, Kaladesh, and New Capenna are the three planes that we know have, like, vehicles now.
We can have now plane-wide wacky races.
Yeah.
Oh, and each time they go through a different Omen Path this is such... Oh, my God. Sorry, my brain just went into a headcanon that's never going to happen. That's awesome.
No, they'll definitely
Plane-wide wacky races.
There will be an unset at least.
Good. Yeah. That sounds amazing. Yeah, because you've got vehicles of various different styles and futurists, like different developments, right? Yeah, you've got... Does Aether work the same way on other planes? It asks a lot of questions. Like, this Omen Path thing does kind of work. And I do like... So, I mean, let's talk Ashiok, right? Because this is what we're kind of getting into.
Oh, Christ, we haven't even spoken about bloody Ashiok.
So we've got people that can travel planes that don't have sparks, and we've still got a few planeswalkers who can. Now, I think this actively diminishes their character because we had a very similar thing happen with Ashiok here, going from starting at the end of their interaction in the story instead of at the beginning.
Yeah.
They did a very similar thing to the Obnixilis did with Elspeth of, oh, I've been hurt. Bye. And why are you here on the plane? Kind of doing nightmare stuff. But to what end? Oh, who knows? Like, that's it. It's very much what you doing, mate. It's very... And then he's like, oh, you may find out later. It's like Kazmina. What you doing over there? Making an army. What for? Guess you'll find out later, maybe.
Yeah. They really need to do something with Kazmina.
It's starting to make planeswalkers feel like they have no drive and motivation, and I'm starting to not care.
Yeah.
Like, take Ashiok out of this story... No difference. Mm-hmm. Because Ariette could have just been so good at slumber magic she could have...
Yeah, like Ariette is...
It kind of actually makes her...
She was meant to be the big bad.
And it makes her feel like nothing.
Yeah.
She's literally put in a cell at the end, and Ashiok comes and goes, hey, wanna play? And she's like, oh, of course you weren't actually dead.
The other thing about Ariette, all of the marketing, every picture of this bloody woman has... Her motif, her 2 motifs are... glass apple, I thought it was a crystal apple, but it's described as a glass apple, and mirrored collar, which shows her old
she's
self.
A crone.
She's a crone.
Well as the beauty.
Because it's the wicked queen, it's the evil stepmother, however you want to say it, from like Snow White or you know, Sleeping Beauty, all these different things. They mention the glass apple. They never mention the collar.
Yeah. Had the slumber been induced by eating from the table that she sat at instead of it just being a spell, for example? That seems really, really cool. There were ways to make it. There were ways to make her feel more important and give her greater agency.
But she has no thing. What's her thing?
Yeah. I mean, again, I felt like this with all of them. Agatha, okay, she's cooking people, and then immediately gets pushed into the pot, and we actually find more about her from her sisters.
She literally gets pushed. She literally just gets pushed into it
with no dialogue. Like she actually doesn't talk. We get a tiny little bit of dialogue between her.
A bit of rhyming.
Yeah, a bit between her and Imodaine, but we hear more about her character after she's dead from one of her sisters.
Oh, that's just so funny.
And then Hilda's just basically like, hey, I'm kind of evil, but actually I'm not, I'm just lonely. And then that's it, and she's gone. She's like, well, I've given up the crown, I can still keep my castle. It's like, so nothing really happened. It's like, yeah, I guess it was the fetch questiest of fetch quest stories, and as much as it worked better because it's a plane of fetch quests, and it did feel kind of cool to be like, you need to consult the mirror to go up into Lord Giant Cloudy Land and go and find and talk to the mirror. And I like the fact that not everything was as simple as I'm evil, twisty mustache person.
Yeah.
Like Yorva goes, oh, come on, Brunhilde, it's absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. Go, like they're guests of mine now, and she has to go. Fuck, the king's just blessed you with being here. I guess I'll show you my fucking mirror. I could have fed you to my goose.
Yeah, I really like the giant because a lot of the time giants, especially on the cards in the last set, were just basically ogres. They were brutes. Whereas in this one, they've gone, no, giants, like most sort of societies, have echelons.
Yeah. And
so Yorvo being... he was the Lord of Garenbrig. So I guess he's king of the giants and of Garenbrig.
Yeah. Well, he was... Does Garenbrig still really count as a court? Again, do the courts have any semblance of being...
He must have been some sort of royalty.
Maybe Yara's fucked off, so Lochwain's not really a thing. The Embereth was always a council anyway, and we do actually we'll get to this next episode, we get obviously the Ironcrag. Fucking Ardenvale's crumbled. I did like the fact that that Rowan gets sent there kind of on a dream quest and goes and has like a Simba moment where she talks to him, where he talks to Mufasa from the afterlife. I did kind of like that bit. Yeah. That did work quite nicely. Garenbrig we don't really see apart from the reference. Obviously, they must still have some court kind of.
Well, they are like the nature people.
And we don't know much about Vantress, but the mirror isn't there anymore, and the mirror's been.
Well, Castle Vantress is Will's base operations now.
Oh, that's true. Sorry, yes. So yes, that's it, right? Yeah, because they go to Gardenvale and it's basically desolate. So yeah, at this point, I don't think any of the courts really matter because no one's doing the quest anyway.
Yeah.
So that structure is kind of gone. So no wonder that Yorvo's like, fuck it, let's go and party up in the clouds. How do they get up there?
Well, I guess...
So it has to be a castle that can float on clouds full of giants.
Yeah, but that's the fantasy part of it.
I know. It's just interesting that they decide, hey, what do we put up in the sky? The biggest, largest thing we possibly
could. But that is the thing, because in Jack and the Beanstalk, he has to go up the beanstalk
to the giant. But it's only like a little family, one family, right? It's not the whole thing.
But then, do you know what this reminded me of? And I'm about 10 years too late to the reference. This whole section of Eldraine feels like The Witcher 3. Because in the DLC for The Witcher 3...
over my head, I might as well be in the ground. I haven't played any of the Witcher games.
There's 2 DLC for The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt, and one of them is he goes to Fantasy World. So there's a section of...
Isn't Witcher already a fantasy? Isn't it already fantasy worldy?
But the Witcher mainline story is based off of a lot of Eastern European folklore,
right? Whereas
this one is explicitly he goes to like an Italian-y sort of like area where it's all Central European fantasy.
Okay.
And in one of the sections of that, he goes into even a further thing where he goes into a storybook where it's all storybook fantasy. So within this one, cool. It's almost actually like the Kellen thing where Kellen's got storybooks of like things that are happening around him. In this one of the main characters who lives in this fantasy world has a storybook of like storybook shit, and one of the things you do in that is you go up a beanstalk and fight a sky giant. So it feels very much like that.
Okay. How long do you reckon this all took Kellen and Ruby? Oh, we didn't talk about Ruby at all. Ruby's actually great.
Ruby's great.
I have no notes because she wasn't super compelling.
She's a Red Riding Hood with crossbows and apples.
Yeah.
Now, apple motif, is she a witch?
I mean,
secretly,
does everyone have the ability to be like a witch?
Well, his mum trains to be a witch, but I think that was like forced servitude. It seems.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a big storyline as well, a message through line of like not all witches are bad kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the idea is like they maybe had opinions of what the wilds actually are in this kind of, again, this is Kellen, fish out of water person, kind of understanding that the wilds aren't actually super crazy. He gets bullied for being half Fae right at the beginning, right? So there is an aspect of an us versus them, and it kind of breaks that down a little bit.
Not all witches are bad. I remember one of the original motifs of the original Eldraine is that something that we hypothesized is that if you're a witch in Eldraine, you start growing limbs, because there were loads of witches that had multiple limbs.
Witches and Moors was all of the
but
hands.
They all had apples.
Yeah.
They all had apples.
Interesting.
As does Ariette.
Yeah, true. I think it's just hard to avoid apples. You know? Apples eventually. Look, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, and you're going to eventually get appled. You know,
it's hard to.
But Ruby was fine. I do feel like I feel like there was enough given to all the characters to feel like, yeah, okay, cool. No one felt super super hard done by, apart from Will and Rowan, just because again they felt like they were thrown in as
the artwork
as the side
for
story.
Ruby's card. We'll get onto it in the next episode by Katrina Burmack is sick.
Yeah, and I like the fact that there's the scene where she ends up picking up Kellen on the Frost Bridge as they're going over towards, and it's basically just through their determination of going, but it's worth fighting. Like anything good is worth fighting for, even if there's a guarantee of death. Is the thing that makes Hildia go, all right, okay, fair enough. That's you are, because I guess are you true of heart was the question that Talion always asks, and maybe you need to have that. You need to have the ability to be friendly enough to get on with the giants, kind of thing. You need to have the fortitude to be able to get through the snow thing with you, just that feeling of, but it's worth fighting for. You need to have the strength, I guess, and
to push a witch into a
cauldron.
Well,
also just to have you have to get through the witch stalkers through Peter and then defeat her. And I like the fact
you need to not be worried about committing literal murder.
And the thing is, they do play into the idea of for the first bit, they are just winging it. Like Ruby doesn't know that Kenna has no idea what the fuck he's doing.
Yeah.
He's basically just going like, I need to make it go like, I need to seem wise. So I said, and then didn't have anything to follow up with. So Ruby clearly knows I have no idea what I'm talking about. And Ruby just kind of goes, well, he's got balls, so I guess let's go along with it. Like
those swords look kind of fancy.
It feels like a very buddy copy of where they're just kind of fumbling their way through things, which I quite like that they see. Again, I wish we had a greater understanding of the time passing instead of it just being end of episode, start of new one. There's been a time gap.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, just the thing that disappointed me. Especially if you're reading them all in one go, which I kind of did. It feels very static between each story instead of it feeling like it flows. And I think that's the only issue. Just give it a bit more time, give it more breathing room. All of the characters that were lacking would have had more time. We could have got some more motive from Mashiok, maybe.
I wonder, and this will be my last sort of thought on it, because I don't want to shit on Chaos and Rivera, because they have such a sort of big part of the recent Magic story that it'd be very disingenuous to be like because they have been the Magic story for the past sort of 2 or 3 years, and they're good for it. I think this might have been a practical problem, where if they had 10 story episodes to do for March of Machines, do you think they had time in the window to actually get these out the door?
Do you reckon they gave them too much to do?
Yeah, or they said, cool, you're doing 10 now. We only can give you 5 for Eldraine because of like time constraints and budget and all this kind of thing.
Maybe they turned around and said, I've only got this much time, and they were like, well, can we commission 15 stories from you then if you can't do 20? Maybe they asked, can you do 20? They went, no. They went, okay, well, do these 10 and then do these 5. And they're actually doing both Will and Kellen.
Yeah.
They definitely weren't meant to be 5 and 5 stories. No, it was always going to be just 5 stories.
Interesting. I wonder.
Yeah, I wonder as well. It does feel mashed together. I will say that. And again, we would have normally had these split up, so it's more telling when you give us a convention and the convention is fine, it's serviceable, and then you break that convention even further. It gets more increasingly frustrating to see that process go from having a novel to going, here's 10 stories, do 5 main, 5 sub stories. And I think there was even a time where they did more main story and then only a few side stories, and now they've made it so it's the same 5 and 5, and then we've gone to the 5 and 5 are put together. I don't think it's an increase on word count. In fact, I think there were some sentences when you read it where it was just missing. It was just missing words. I'm like, oh yeah, you're really just kind of putting in the minimal effort to do this, right? And it's very telling in, as you said at the beginning, like the way they present the YouTube videos as well, of where it hasn't been fully edited and it's not available just as an audio. You have to kind of watch the embedded videos. You can't even listen to it as an audio book separately if you're on the tube or something. It feels very, again, rushed, but I feel like Magic in general right now feels rushed. And I don't know if eventually it's going to get to a point of where they realise that they're rushing it and they pull back on it. Because it feels like it always feels like they're so focused on throwing out the new Doctor Who product, and then obviously there's going to be Fallout next year, and then let's get to the spot of Thunder Junction,
Cowboy set,
whatever thing, enemies of Thunder Junction, cool bad guys of Thunder Junction. It feels like cool, it's very much, all right, let's get this out of the way, and they've got these other things coming out. It's like, but I've got at least 2 months to at least look at this set.
Yeah.
Can you just give me a 2 months worth of content?
The problem is that this is not a new complaint.
No.
And every time we sit down with something, we always feel like it's too rushed. Because I think it's maybe the problem is us.
What, that we just want too much?
Well, that we're invested and we like it, as does every other Vorthos. We all want more all the time. And there have been times where they've given us more and we've given them props for it. This, I think the only thing, again, like to devil's advocate that, is that this is definitely half the story space for double the story. So there we go. But there we are.
Well, first
some good, some bad.
When first plane we've gone back to since the aftermath, as it were. We get to see a little bit of how it works, and I kind of like the formatting, you know?
Yeah.
I like the fact we get a little bit of a hint of, there was this stuff. It does also feel like when he's poking with the Phyrexian, he's like, oh yeah, these invaders. It's like, how long ago is it? It makes it feel like they're already like all grown over and vined over.
Well, they go underneath like a big Hulk, don't they?
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, you know, the Phyrexian stuff hopefully it has some further ramifications, and we still didn't get any justification on what's happening with Planeswalkers and why. Again, it could have been muddied by the fact that they've got a split spark anyway.
Yeah.
We've yet to get a POV of a Planeswalker who's lost their spark and actually properly thought about it, apart from the Nahiri side story of Aftermath.
Yeah.
And if that's all of the justification they're going to give it,
fucking hell.
Fuck, yeah. Which is a shame, because I feel like most people would have kind of avoided that story and missed that story, even though it kind of does give... And again, if that's the only justification they're going to get, then you should probably go back and read that, because you're going to be left wanting otherwise. But... So what is our next set?
Caverns.
Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Okay, cool. Which I think will probably have less to do with the everything else that's going on outside, unless they get down into Lost Caverns and it's got an omen, a giant fuck off omen path on top of the altar instead of the cool Ixalan god that we might see. Instead, it's hey, here's something else from another plane,
or a giant power stone with the power to give every planeswalker its spark back because they can just nibble on it.
Don't do that. Don't give them ideas, Andy. But yeah, I mean, overall, yeah, good, some bad. Felt good about it in general. Excited to talk about the set.
It was fine.
I'm excited to talk about the set as well, because I feel like the
set is real good.
And I don't think the story necessarily lets it down, but again, we're the podcast of more is more, even if we keep saying slow down, stop giving us so many sets and planes.
Do exactly what we want.
Yeah. Do more of the more that we want and less of the less that we want.
There are 121 episodes. You can figure it out. There's enough.
We've set you up here. We've given you all the tools. Please build something better.
But also thank you for what we've got.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't roll it back, please. So yeah, the set's rad. Okay, that's it.
That's it. That's all we've got to say. Thanks so much for listening. You've been great.
Don't you dare steal my bit.
The look on his face. Right, go on now. Roll it out.
Thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
We didn't do any of the emails or stuffs.
Oh, fuck. Tell us what you think about Throne of Eldraine. You can hit us up on our Twitter at MTFlavouring. That's with an OURING. Emails go to mtflavouring@gmail.com. My personal Twitter is at Andy Manface. Nathan's, yours is...
At the Fox in the Moon.
Great. Tell this podcast...
Tell the podcast.
Tell this podcast.
You tell it.
What
tell
you
it,
think.
guys. Tell
your friends and other Vorthos about this podcast. It does definitely help us out. We get quite a lot of reviews actually now on things like Spotify and stuff, which I'm really happy about. Well, I don't think they're written ones. I think they're just song. It's cool. It's nice. It's good. So, cool. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
I'll see you soon.